It's been interesting, although there've been many ups and downs, you've always seemed to go with major labels and fought to see your music released through that kind of system. Is that what's been your main drive for that?
Well, I mean, I suppose we came through a period when there were independent labels, but we were, we signed to Capitol in 1985, and at that point we just went where somebody loved us. We found somebody, an A&R guy. Actually, funnily enough, the guy that signed us to Capitol, it was his first day on the job, and he really didn't want to like anything particularly. And his name was Tom Wally, and he now runs Warner Brothers Music. So he got fired from Capitol soon after we had a hit, and we never understood that. But anyway, so he's done all right now. And then we were with them until just very recently, really, because we had Parlophone in the UK, and they were a great label, and I think it's a really hard time for Parlophone these days.
It seems like we're losing a proper British institution in the sense, it is a brand that means something. And
well, I think they were a great label, and the people. It's all about people, like they don't. That's what I've realised. Even in a major label sense, people have this kind of idea of the major label as being a big, one-eyed monster or whatever. But it really depends on who's out there working your record. There's great people amongst it, and if you hook in with some great people, as there were at Parlophone, and as we're discovering now at Universal, there's a few really great people. Is all that makes the difference.
Mercury at the moment is it's definitely on the roll as a label. It seems to be really.
There's a culture develops, and if there's people at the top that are nurturing that, and more importantly, in a way, people who are working the record out on if they get on your case, it's still about them, But the little labels now are far more important in the whole process because some of the corporate world has gone completely AWOL,
Yeah, I think it's hard at the moment for. Just the laws of economy have been so difficult, and bedroom labels that were, perhaps selling thousands of records now are selling tens and hundreds, and it's
you got to be resourceful, don't you? Really,
totally.
Yeah. But there's something good about. I think what is admirable about that is that you set your sights on realistic levels in terms of, keeping your focus on the music really. But it means that. In the same way, good people can still create an incredible buzz just by getting excited about something. You don't need a lot of expensive dinners and, expensive merchandise and all that stuff necessarily to tell a story if you get excited about music.
How do you feel though about with indie labels? There seems to be a culture of just letting the artists do whatever they want, which I think in loads of cases is a glorious and very positive thing. But also, I know that there traditionally in major labels and things has been a good, healthy friction between good A&R people and the artists. Like I know you've been in the situation where you've made a record and then reworked it under discussion and things like that. Like with Woodface, for example, I believe you brought Tim back into the band and things like that. Do you think that those things have been creative catalysts and that those kind of real characters, real music men are missing, or do you feel...
It could be, and I don't know who's out there because I would suspect, as always has been the case, a lot of A&R guys are complete wankers, but and that's still probably the case, but I bet you there's a couple of really good ones as well.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to have a creative collaborator in a record company sense, I think you're really, it's a really fine thing.
Because it seems there's only when you look at legendary music men, there's people like Seymour Stein and things like that.
Yeah, well, those are the kind of guys, and like the people that were, Mo Austin and, Lenny Waronker, and they were really, they were either producers or they were musicians, and they were really interested in setting raising the bar for their artists in a way, and being facilitators and being really supportive. But I think it's really great to have somebody to pull your head in sometimes and go, focus your attention on what it is about what you do that might connect with people,
So at the time, is it a fuck you reaction, like, oh, I really hate that and I'm going to prove you wrong, or is it something that you appreciated at the time or even appreciate now? Do you think that there were things they were wrong about?
Well, I mean, there hasn't been many times actually. To be honest, we haven't really had to have much A&R input, accept much A&R input in many records. The very first Crowded House album, we had Tom Whalley looking over our shoulder a little bit, but he kind of left us to it. But he was the facilitator for finding Mitchell Froome, who was a great relationship at the time. He was a very valuable man. I'd never worked with a producer really like him, because he was a musician and he was really good at throwing the songs up in the air and saying, how about if we looked at it that way or this way? And I thought that was an incredibly valuable thing. But since then we've had a pretty free reign.
I think you've earned it, and I think that's the thing that lots of songwriters have to prove, that they can consistently, write life-changing songs.
But then I've messed it up too. I've had times where I probably would have really benefited from having somebody to just put, just even sitting in a room and saying, who's out there that you really want to work with? How could we get to this person or that person? It could be a musician that's not even a producer or whatever, but I think there's a lot of people doing it on their own, and a lot of people do it very well on their own, but in my opinion, at some point, you can make exponential progress by being in the room with somebody who you admire and you want to impress.
Totally.
And who can actually point show at you angles about what you do yourself that you've never noticed, or curb your excesses, or I think it's a hugely valuable thing, and it doesn't happen much.
Yeah, it seems like that with your musical collaborators as well. It's such a feeding off and a fueling of ideas from interacting with the right other people. Yeah,
it has worked brilliantly at times, and but at times I've done stuff on my own, and it's been fun too. I mean, I'm incredibly amazed really to see what Liam managed to achieve with his last record, my son Liam, and for the benefit of those who don't know what I'm talking about. Just because he did that whole last record of his completely on his own, it sort of engineered it, mixed it, produced it, played on it. I mean, he had a few people coming in and out, Conan, and I even played bass on one song myself, but I was pretty blown away really, because that seems to me that's really hard to do. But he was ready at that point for that experience. And I think maybe at some point it might be fantastic for him to work with a great collaborator as well, because I just think, the main thing is for me, you're trying to impress somebody in the room that you kind of admire. You might not agree with them, but you're just showing off for them, a little bit, and brings you out of yourself, And
so with that, how was it working with Youth on Together Alone? What's he like as a character?
I think I'm really happy with the record we made together. So in the end of the day, he was a great producer for us.
I think that may be my favourite of your albums.
It's my favourite, and that's what Youth would say too. If anybody said, well, I hear it wasn't always the easiest. Well, still they made a great record, didn't they? That would be his response, and he's right. I found some aspects of working with him quite difficult, to be honest. But
really, what were those challenges? Was it?
Just. He kind of tuned in and out a little bit, there was of the process. But then I'm a pretty kind of driven kind of guy, and I don't know, maybe there's times when people just can't keep tuned in as much as I would like them to. It's complex to even discuss. There's an element of just psychology that I didn't understand. He's got a slightly kind of hippie viewpoint to what he did in those days. But I don't know that was really who he was, so there was a slight dichotomy there.
It's often the way, I think, when you have hippies who have other agendas and things as well, which comes out.
But he's a great musician, and he had a great instinct for letting it roll, and
because sonically, some of the more I think there's great drones and things in the background of that record, and that reminds me of the Intriguer now as well. That's a kind of although very different sounding records, the kind of pushing in those different spaces.
Well, I think we love the idea of being a psychedelic band, and we haven't quite arrived there yet, but we have good little echoes of it. Like on this record, I think there is a couple of really, really lovely psychedelic moments, but the pop side of my mentality always hauls me back into the chorus. So one day I think I'll make a record that's completely willfully psychedelic beginning to end, and Youth was obviously tuned into that possibility as well, so songs like Private Universe ended up with a much more trancey, droney kind of thing, and that was a good influence on us.
Cool. Good stuff. And so the new record as well, Linked to, I read this is a press release thing, which I don't normally do as well, but I was intrigued by the unknown figure that was it mentioned about it. This was in a room not dissimilar to here, maybe.
Well, no, it was in a hotel. We were drinking in an atrium style hotel, you know, where there's a bar in the middle and all the rooms go up all around you, and there was a window that we saw on the top floor. And a curtain drawn and a shadowy figure moving across it every few minutes. And it seemed to us, Michael Lunig, my friend in Australia, and I, that every time the figure went across the window, something happened in the bar, like a waiter spilled a tray of drinks and a woman had a screaming match with her husband. And it was a really eventful night, and a lot of kind of quite a weird, uncanny little events.
You were sober for this
experience? We weren't entirely sober, but we weren't entirely drunk either, so it wasn't an imagination. And we gave him the name of the Intriguer. We said, the Intriguer up there, and ever since then we've discussed his presence, and we've recognised his presence as being like that element of mysterious happenstance that comes along every now and again, where things are actually quite troubling and difficult, and layer upon layer of mystery, but you struggle with it, but you're also quite glad of these things because they lead you to good places, and you have to be resourceful to get out of these predicaments. And I had a classic on Jules Holland the other night where I misread a cue card and I finished the song. I chopped our song short because I thought we were running out of time for the live show and I wanted to get to the chorus early. And I left them with 2 minutes of of time in the live show because we didn't play the agreed length of time.
Bring out the spoons.
And Jules was he was sort of flustered. He's very professional, so he didn't really, we've got a couple of minutes to fill in, and looked at me hopefully, and I ended up playing a verse and a chorus of another song, and it finished bang on the end of the show. So out of the jaws of mishap, we had sort of a glorious moment.
2 songs plugged as well. So
and 2 songs plugged.
People will be saying you did it intentionally.
Well, they might have, because it ended up so well. But that was a classic Intriguer moment. A problem develops, and then you have to deal with it, and then it brings the best out of you. So
it's kind of like an anti-muse in a sense.
It's like a muse too, as well, because it is an anti-muse, and it's the muse as well, because a lot of my songs have come from that, little happy accidents, and days when you're really struggling, you think nothing's happening, and you just throw something out, in a fit of frustration, and reveal a bass line that you suddenly realise that's the only thing that I like about this song is that bass line, and you build another song on it. So, it's a mysterious process, yeah. And
so when you're describing writing like that, is your approach to it, do you like clock in and say I'm going to write today and you write every day, or is it waiting for that moment, or how do you approach that?
It's good to clock in, because I find that it takes a few days to develop the right mentality, and there's a myriad of ways you can distract yourself from the task of starting. You have to begin somewhere, and you have to be a bit ordinary for a few days, I think, and write pretty dull stuff and scratch your head, and then all of a sudden a bit of inspiration strikes because you're there. Somebody said once, and I totally relate to it, is that inspiration is what happens when you start working. It's like you have to start working first. You can't wait till you get inspired.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Cool. I think we're probably
all right. Well, it's been a good conversation.
But thanks very much for answering so candidly, and
it's always, when you're doing a round of press, it's always good to have somebody intelligent to talk to.
Oh, thank you.